Today I am going to be ranking the Legend of Zelda games from worst to best, including Echoes of Wisdom, but not including Triforce Heroes because personally I don't have time for it and I don't really view it as a mainline title. Here's how this tier list is going to work. I'm going to kind of give the games a grade based on the score I give them out of 10, so anything below 6 out of 10 is a D, between 6 and 7 is a C, 7 to 8 is a B, 8 to 9 is an A, between 9 and 10 gets an S, and then the number one game, my favourite Zelda game, is going to stand alone in the GOAT tier. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video if you enjoyed it, and comment your opinions in the comments below. But let me give you an opinion warning, okay? This is just an opinion. Just because it's my opinion, it does not need to affect yours. I'm going to go from worst to best. So, in at number 19, with a score of 5 out of 10, is going to be Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. For me, there is a reason why we do not see any side-scrolling Zelda games anymore. They tried something with this. For me personally, it just didn't hit. And it's not that I'm following the crowd and saying it's the worst. For me, this is fundamentally the worst Zelda game that there is. I'll be interested to see how my opinion changes after a replay, but I just don't see this type of game kind of existing again in the franchise. In at number 18 with a score of 6.5 out of 10 is the Phantom Hourglass. So for me, this one is just because of the controls and how the game plays. I find it very, very, very difficult to play this game. The stylus controls in the DS. And as I've said before, Zelda is probably Zelda's most innovative franchise. It's the one they experiment on the most. But whenever this comes off the back of the Wind Waker, I just think for me it just didn't hit the same. I love Toon Link, I love the art style. I do enjoy some of the dungeons, but it's the stylus controls, they're just not for me. And that's the only reason it goes down, and I think that's very important. I think the gameplay in a game is very, very important, and that's why this is so low down on my list. In at number 17, we have Four Swords Adventures, again with a 6.5 out of 10. This for me is just a case of my preference, so I prefer my Zelda games when it is you play as the individual Link, you have the individual story. I just did not gel with the kind of Four Swords element of the game, and that was the main point. Now, what I do enjoy about the Nintendo Switch Online version is there's a remastered edition of Link to the Past, which is the good thing. But yeah, Four Swords isn't for me, and also that's why I've neglected Triforce Heroes. They're not for me. I don't like them the same, and I don't see Triforce Heroes really as a mainline title. But Four Swords, yeah, not for me. I'm really interested to know though what you think of that style of Zelda game, because I think it's an interesting one. I think they tried something, but for me it just didn't hit. In at number 16, and this just shows you the quality of Zelda games, because this game is getting a 7 out of 10, so only 3 games get less than 7 in the Zelda franchise in my opinion. But that is, for me, Oracle of Seasons. Now, don't get it twisted, I like the Oracle games, I think they're good. I think they're slightly behind graphically their counterparts. I know they were on the Game Boy Advance, but I also feel like some of the games that came out around that time looked better. This one went for a more retro style, and Seasons for me is the lesser of the two. You can definitely tell that it's not the main team that made this game. There's definitely elements of it that feel different, not in a bad way, but you can definitely tell. And while the Seasons puzzle aspect of the game was fun, I am more leaning towards Ages for reasons I will get to very, very soon. But yeah, Seasons for me in at number 16. And in at 15, also with a 7 out of 10, is Seasons' little brother, Oracle of Ages. I really like the puzzles in this game. I think the puzzles are really interesting, and I do like the way the two games link with the code and that kind of thing, and the different fights you can get that way. It's a good idea, don't get me wrong. There's just something about them that doesn't hit the same way, and I'm not sure what it is for me. It could be a personal preference thing, and I do enjoy the dungeons, and some of the boss fights are okay, but yeah, they just don't hit the same as some of the others, but they still get a B, which is pretty good. Okay, number 14, and it feels like there's a theme here whenever we are going through the rankings. We have The Legend of Zelda Spirit Tracks with a 7 out of 10 as well. I think it's the better one of the two DS games. I quite like the train mechanics, and the song from the game is always in my head. I really like it. I think it's slightly better and does things slightly better than Phantom Hourglass, and I think that's simply because they learned the lessons from the first game when it came to the DS. I think they did things that improved the gameplay ever so slightly, but I will never gel with the stylus controls. I've talked about that before. I think it's a good game. I think it's good for the handheld DS and a good kind of carry around game, but some of the games coming up are just so elite that this one falls down in comparison. We are fast moving up the rankings, and we are now at number 13, and in at number 13 we go to none other than the original, the OG, The Legend of Zelda, which I have given a 7.5 out of 10. This game is still good to replay today, 38 years later, and this is the fundamental game that without this game we would not have the franchise that I've based my channel off, that you guys watching maybe enjoy so much. This game is just one of those timeless. You can play it now, it's timeless, it's still difficult, some of the puzzles are still really good. Obviously the dungeon design is not anything like what we see now. This is where the idea started, this is where the series began, and I think to not recognise that and respect that wouldn't be right of me, so that is why I have it sitting at number 13. In at number 12 we have the most recent release of the series, The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. They did something new here, didn't they? They tried something different. Obviously playing as Zelda was the big thing, which I really like the idea. I think it's good to get twists in the series. Would I want to see Zelda games become more around Zelda? I don't think so, from a playable point of view. I think the way that you played that game had its flaws. I spent a lot of time in the dungeons and rooms sending out moblins and other enemies that I'd killed before to do my fighting for me. It didn't hit the same way as playing as Link would. I enjoyed some of the puzzle elements, and I know that bringing in the freedom that we got from Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild into a essentially top-down 2D Zelda game was really interesting. It was nice to have dungeons again after 10 years since we had new dungeons in the series. So for all of that reason, it's a good game, but it's just marked down for me because of the gameplay. And with number 11, we move up to the A tier, getting an 8 out of 10. It is The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. Now, I am basing my rankings off the original versions of these games, so I am not basing this off the remake. I'm basing this off the original. I like this game. I think they did some new ideas that were pretty cool. The story is interesting. The dream element is interesting. Obviously bringing in some of the Mario enemies and things as a nice twist. It's a fun twist. Overall, I think it's a good time. It's fun. We're getting into the realm now where if I'm making any sort of comments, it's very pernickety. It's very going out of my way to find things to comment on. An 8 out of 10 in any game is really good. And Link's Awakening, the remake for me, enhances the game, but I wanted to make sure that I based my ranking off of the originals. We are at the halfway point of our list, so if you've got this far, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more weekly Zelda uploads every single Sunday. In at number 10, we begin the top 10 with what I believe is the most underrated Zelda game in the franchise, and that is The Legend of Zelda, The Minish Cap. This is such a good game. I really love playing this game whenever I do replay it. and I was really glad that they brought it on Nintendo Switch Online. So good, great fun, lovely art style, lovely colours, and the twist of making yourself super small and exploring areas that way. I really enjoyed that. It's a really good time, and if you haven't played it, I would tell you, go and play it. Go get the online subscription, go and play this game. It's so worth your while. We are now reaching the 85% stage, and kicking us off with an 8.5 out of 10, and in at number 9 is the best DS original game, in my opinion, and that is A Link Between Worlds. Originally, when it came out, a lot of people panned it because whenever they first started playing, they thought, well, this is just a remake of A Link to the Past. But then they saw there were some really original ideas in this. The paint mechanic is one, the rental system of weapons is another, and this was an absolute sleeper hit for me at the time. I remember playing it the first time, thinking it was alright. A few years later, I went back to it, and oh my days, this game is so good. Like, such a great game. And it is really a shame that these games haven't made it to the Switch, because the Switch really is the ultimate Zelda machine. You can play so many of these games on the Switch. This is one, and the other two still haven't made it to this list that you can't play, that I'm personally gutted about. I still have my 3DS, so sometimes I do boot it up just to play this game again. But yeah, a great time. Would highly recommend if you can find it in, a hardware shop that has a 3DS somewhere or something like that. Try and grab it if you can. It's such a good time. In at number 8, we have the best Link, I think. The best music, absolutely. The story that fills in so many lore points throughout the series. It's, of course, The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. Now, I'm basing this off the original, again, so I think if I was to rank the Switch edition, this would actually be higher, because I'm a fan of the button controls. But when it came out on the Wii, the motion controls were difficult, I found, and I was quite young at the time when it came out. But not only that, but it was the linearity of the game that I think really holds this back, because you could see there was a vision of Skyloft down into the overworld, but it's the way that you have to go up to Skyloft from one area to then go down to another area. They just couldn't achieve what they wanted to achieve with this, and for me, this is where they kind of realised this potential in Tears of the Kingdom, which we'll get into later on. But Skyward Sword does have the best Link, in my opinion. I think the music is just unbelievable, and the story and some of the dungeons here are fantastic. Some of the best dungeons in the series you'll find in Skyward Sword. So it's a great time, but it gets an 8.5 out of 10 just because of the motion controls. In at number 7, also getting an 8.5 out of 10, is The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. I love Twilight Princess. I love the HD version. For me, the reason that I give this an 8.5 is the opening of the game is very slow. It's very monotonous, and it's very difficult to enjoy for me on subsequent playthroughs. And I remember when I first played this game, kind of sitting there being like, is this going to, are we going to start doing stuff? Or, so it kind of is a slow starter. As I've said before, this is purely based on the original. I haven't taken the remasters into account, but I love the dungeons in this game. I love the story in this game. I think that Ganondorf scene when he's on the throne is just so cool and badass, and the story is pretty interesting as well. This needs to come to Switch, and I'll say it about the Wind Waker as well. These games need to come to Switch, because oh my days, it would be unbelievable to get them like fully realised. We could see them come to Switch too. I'd be surprised if we didn't. But yeah, I was looking online recently to see how much it would be to get a GameCube edition of Twilight Princess, and it's so rare now. It is literally £95 here in the UK to buy the original edition of Twilight Princess. So over time, these games age like fine wine, and Twilight Princess is no different. Just missing out on the top 5, but making its way as the first game to get 90% or above with a 9 out of 10, is The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. I could talk a long time about why, for me, this is the most disappointing masterpiece, is how I'd put it. I think two things affected me for this, really. One, the story doesn't work being open in the way that it is. Mainly because in Breath of the Wild, you knew what happened before you went and found the memories. In Tears of the Kingdom, the whole story is a mystery. So, as the player, if I stumble upon a geoglyph that isn't in the order that I need it to be in, I do it anyway because I'm like, am I really going to come back? I'm going to spoil myself on key elements of the story that then when I go and find the earlier memories will kind of be like, oh. So I could find the last memory first, for example. Unlikely, but I could. Totally spoil the story. And then Link acts dumb throughout the rest of the game as if he doesn't know what's going on because no one else knows what's going on. So for me, the storytelling just doesn't work the same way. The second thing is the lack of consistency between Breath of the Wild and the Tears of the Kingdom. So it's like, why do people not know who Link is? Where are all the Sheikah stuff? Where are the shrines? They've all just disappeared. And like the lack of kind of follow through from the previous game. I know they talk about like Hyrule rebuilding and blah blah and all these things, but I just feel like there's not enough continuity between the two games. It's so rare that we get a sequel to any Zelda game, so rare. But for this one, I just think there's elements of it that don't work. Now, gameplay unbelievable, world unbelievable, the depths unbelievable, but I just think there are some elements that just make this game fall flat for me. We are now in the top 5, and kicking us off in the top 5 with a 9 out of 10 rating is The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. This is like the dark cousin of Zelda. This is one of the darkest Zelda games, if not the darkest Zelda game. And also, for me, this is the most difficult of them all. I find this game fascinating with every playthrough. I think it is the least friendly of them in terms of you just go in and it's just like, away you go, try and figure this out for yourself. There's nothing more frustrating than finishing a dungeon with like, let's say 12 hours to go, trying to finish off the story. So I think about the first dungeon, Woodfall. You free the princess and they're like, oh, there's a gift on the shrine, away you go. And then the butler chases you on this like ridiculous goose chase to get the reward. If you don't get it in time and you need to go back in time to save your progress, you then have to go and finish the dungeon again, which they do narrow down for you. Obviously you can teleport straight to the boss, do the freeing again and then go back. I think it's really interesting. I think it's very innovative and it shows Nintendo's appetite to really like try new things. That's why I have it up in number 5. Okay, number 4 with a 9.5 out of 10, so almost perfect, is The Legend of Zelda A Link to the Past. I think this game really sets the rest of the series in the direction that it went down. So stylistically, it's really great. It holds up so well even today. The story is great. The dungeons are fantastic. Some of the bosses are so good. But it was kind of this game that realised the future of the franchise. So many of the great Zelda games follow the path that A Link to the Past took. And it's just a great time. I find it very relaxing to play. Sometimes whenever I'm just looking to chill for an hour, I'll just boot up A Link to the Past on Switch Online. Yeah, it's just a great time. Would recommend, if you haven't played it, give it a go. Because you might be put off by the age, but don't let the age put you off because it holds up so well even today. Getting the bronze medal for Zelda games, still getting a 9.5 out of 10, is The Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker. It is a beautiful, beautiful game. The art style is fantastic, and I think I am benefiting from not really being old enough to first play the game when it came out, because when it first came out, a lot of people panned this because of the art style. They were so used to Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask and that style of 3D game that whenever we got the cartoony version, it was kind of given a lot of down boots, that kind of thing. overall, but it holds up so well, and this game does not age. As I said, I'm basing this on the originals. The game still doesn't age now, but the HD remake is just gorgeous. Like, that game is one of the best looking games Nintendo have ever put out. I love the game, I love the boot, I love like all of those things. The story is so fascinating, linking back to Ocarina of Time. There's so many things you could say about this game, but the Wind Waker is just so... like, the word I was going to use there is lovely. It's just a lovely game to play. In silver medal position, but getting a score of 10 out of 10. Can we get a drum roll, please? It is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild is a masterpiece in almost every way, apart from the dungeons and the lack thereof. There is a reason why so many open world games that are coming out now in 2024 have been inspired by the design of Breath of the Wild. It is just amazing. I've spoken last week's video, which you can watch after this one, is all about the Great Plateau and why it is just genius tutorial design. But there are so many things in this game that just set it apart from the rest. The feeling of calm exploration, the story, while told in maybe not the best way, is kind of Zelda at some of its finest. Obviously we can go into why there are elements that just don't hit the same way as other Zelda games, and that's why it is number 2 ultimately, but this game was genius. It was ahead of its time, and it was a bold step by Nintendo that ultimately paid off. And the reason it's better than Tears of the Kingdom for me is because it did it first, and in some elements did it better. So at number 2 we have Breath of the Wild. Which means, of course, in at number 1, and the GOAT of all GOATs, for me this is the greatest game of all time, not just the greatest Zelda game of all time, this is the greatest video game ever made. It is of course The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time. Isn't it crazy that the first 3D Zelda game that they ever made ended up being the best? Ocarina of Time's story is unbelievable. It is one of the best stories in the series. The dungeons are some of the best in the series. The bosses are some of the best in the series. This game just gets everything spot on, and it is this game is why I am a Zelda fan today, and that is why I'm making videos like this. If it wasn't for this game, I'm not sure I would have played a lot of these others. There's a reason why Ocarina of Time is so iconic. The music is so good. So many of the fundamental themes that we know from Zelda came from Ocarina of Time. Story with young Link, adult Link, the way that this game then affects the timeline of the rest and where they all fit in the Zelda lore. This is just gaming perfection, and even better than that. This is just, nothing will reach this. I don't think we'll ever get a game like this, only because this game did it first. You could recreate the idea of this, the feeling and everything, but it'll always be compared to Ocarina of Time. So there you go, there is my definitive ranking of the Legend of Zelda series, from worst to best, including Echoes of Wisdom. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Please let me know in the comments down below. Let's have a friendly conversation about the rankings. As always, let me just put a disclaimer on this. Obviously, this is my opinion. I do not mean to offend anyone by putting games in certain positions. I hope you understand that I do love The Legend of Zelda, and that just because a game gets a B doesn't mean that I don't enjoy playing it even today. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please like and subscribe for more content, and I will see you next Sunday, where I will be beginning a playthrough of Skyward Sword HD, so be sure to join me for that. Until next time, I'm the Zelda Realm, and I will see you soon.